Hello everybody, this is Bobby Mills for theindependent.com, and today we have a special program for you, a preview of the 10th annual Heartland Hoops Classic coming up February 10th at the Heartland Event Center at Fonner Park here in Grand Island. And of course, with us today we have the creator of this event, Tino Martinez, Grand Island entrepreneur and coach here at Grand Island Central Catholic, and former GICC coach and Hastings College men's coach, fresh from a trip to Sioux City, Iowa, Bill Gavers. Are you awake, Coach?
Yeah, we're hanging in there.
You're hanging in there. Well, I'm glad to have you both. Tino, this is the 10th year of the Heartland Hoops Classic. I thought maybe it'd be appropriate to review some of the things from last year and maybe some of the highlights of the years that have gone by. And there have been some terrific players over the years. I don't know if there's any of them in the NBA, but there's certainly some great college players.
Yeah, and actually it'll be the 11th annual this year.
Is it the 11th?
Yeah, we celebrated 10 years last year.
Wow.
And, Aaron was going through and collaborating some stuff for the program this year, and we do have 2 or 3 NBA players, Darius Thornwell, Troy Williams, and there's one that escapes my mind, but crazy enough, when she was researching, we do have 3 players that are in the NBA.
Is Bacon in the NBA?
Dwayne Bacon's the other one.
Yeah, that's
Dwayne
right. I
Bacon,
forgot
yeah.
about him. That's pretty good.
But those guys can play a little bit.
Yeah, it boggles my mind. Yeah. How about last year, Tino? What that was of course every year seems to get better. What was the highlight of the whole day to you?
Well, I think it's always fun when you're able to have a Nebraska team compete with one of the national teams. You know, we've had it with Omaha Central, with Oak Hill and Denver East, and then we've had it with last year with Papillion. Really probably could have and should have won that game against Sunrise Christian. So I think that's always neat when you can display some Nebraska teams doing well amongst what people consider nationally in the top 25 teams. And then the other stories that happened throughout the day, there were some really good games, played during the day, and it's always fun for me to watch the different classes and that types of things go at each other.
And great matchups crossing classes. That's what I like about this deal. And then this year, of course, we have 2 national powers playing each other in the featured game. We'll get to that in just a little bit. So Tino, we'll mention this right now and then at the end of the show. Ticket prices, couldn't get a better deal, for goodness sakes.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Tickets are, adult tickets are $16, students are $10. We do have some courtside seating available for $75 a seat. All tickets are good for every game the whole day long, and we don't have sessions. If you leave to want to go out in town and grab lunch, you can come back later and not repay to get in, and so I think it's a very good value for what you're getting. I mean, eight games for one price of admission.
Yeah, you don't get that in Lincoln, do you?
No, you do not.
I think this is a premier event, and it has been since the beginning. I haven't ever asked this question. How many people, and we're going over the logistics of how to set this thing up, how many people are involved during the day? Would you get just an approximation? I mean, there's a lot of things that go on. You have to have ticket takers, and you have to have people, security. How many would you say are involved?
It'd be hard to put in a number on that. You got all the table personnel. We got the ladies that do such a good job in our hospitality room, the ushers, the ticket takers, security. We got the sound system people upstairs. I would have to say there's 50 to 75 people, throughout the day there.
And it's tough to set up. It's just tough to set everything up, and plus there's a lot more that goes into it. And I think a lot of things that drive these things, I think there's just a couple of other ones. I think the one at the Ralston Arena. I think a lot of it that drives these things into the ground is the rent that and I don't know if you want to get into that, but it's not cheap.
Well, it's not cheap. I mean, you definitely have to have one, community support. I mean, we have sponsors that have been with us for all 11 years.
My next question.
And without those sponsors, you know, you're just not going to be able to put the event on. And then the other thing that, and I talk about this every year, is I just really feel that the Grand Island, Kearney, Hastings area have really good sports stands. And when I go over and I watch the Hastings Broncos play, they have people there that are just sports fans from the area. And I think they also support this event and have supported it very well. So we're lucky with those two things. And then you also have to have a good product, and I think we've done that for the 11 years. We've had some really good games.
Yeah. You know, Bill, you played in Omaha when you were younger. There's a town for years that they thought couldn't support big events. And now look what they're doing, Olympic swimming trials. This is a good state for people getting out and supporting all levels of sports, I think.
Oh yeah, no question about it. It doesn't matter where you're at in Nebraska. I think people are sports fans. They like to support a variety of sporting events, and this one's no different. I know on Tino's end, just common sense, when you bring in somebody like Oak Hill, there's going to be some finances involved. You're talking about a team that's ranked #1 in the country, and you're getting to see NBA guys that are future NBA guys. So those are unique once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. On our end, my assistant coaches, one year we played Dakota Wesleyan in Mitchell, South Dakota, which is about a 4.5-hour trip on Sunday, and we stayed for the 9 o'clock game, the Oak Hill game, just to see those guys play, and rolled into Mitchell, South Dakota about 4 in the morning and played the next day. But it was well worth it looking back, because again, those are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities.
I have to ask you, as a college coach, what kind of was that a smorgasbord that day?
Oh yeah, and I wish I could go. We'll be in Sioux Center, Iowa, competing
Yeah.
against Dordt. But last year, we actually sent our 2 assistant coaches there to look at players and things like that, because it is a great event.
And there's a lot of great players playing there. Great recruiting. Tino, how I have to ask you about how you choose the teams. I'm sure you've been asked 1,000 times, and it's not like, you know, you're not getting any inquiries either. Because I bet, you know, I think Fall City Sacred Heart would love to come up here. But, you know, sometimes the years don't fall right, sometimes schedules don't fall right. They play on a Friday and too far away. But how many inquiries a year do you get of people wanting to be in this thing?
Over every year it grows. You know, we got a lot of. I'm starting to get people that are wanting to try to, you know, make it work for their schedules next year.
Yep.
You know, when we went from the first 2 or 3 years where we're selling it to people to get into the thing, and and now we're unfortunately not able to fit everybody in that wants to be in, which is a good thing. But we just got to go through the rosters of the teams and the classes and figure out who's going to have good teams in a year from now, and you know, hopefully it works out. This year it's worked out really good, and other years, you know, it's maybe started out the season as some highly touted games, and by the time they got there, it wasn't as good. So a lot of luck but it's a matter of trying to get the best teams in each class facing up against somebody.
And it takes work, and you do have to project if they're going to be good next year, go in the rosters and see who's coming back. But there haven't been very many disappointing matchups all the way through this, because I've seen every one. And, you know, we'll look at some records here. There's only one record that's not very good this year, and that'd be Omaha South. But, boy, you don't count them out of any game, I can tell you that right now. What about 2 nationally ranked teams playing each other, and why haven't you done it in the past?
Well, I've always been one is I always wanted to showcase a Nebraska team that could. You know, we've been lucky and have had Omaha South, Omaha Central, and last year Papillion, who had a national recruit. You know, this year I didn't maybe see that as much happening in Nebraska. We have some very good players in Nebraska, but I didn't think we had that one team that maybe, you know, I tried real hard with Creighton Prep, and they are in that long-standing home and homes they have with Brockhurst every year, and so you know that they wanted to do it, but they couldn't break that, and I understood that. So our next thing was to look at a possibility of 2 national teams, and with the relationships that I have had with Steve Smith from Oak Hill and Luke Barnwell from Wichita, Sunrise Christian. Yeah. Those were the first 2 people I reached out to, and they jumped at it. And So it is a bigger undertaking financially, and a lot more burden in that respect. But you know, Tony Dorado is the national Nike high school rep. So he works with Luke Barnwell and Steve Smith, and
Sure.
he's always cautioned me against doing that, because other events that do it, you might have the number 1 versus number 7 team in the country, and you go to a gym and it's half empty, a high school gym. So he's always cautioned that having a home team like Omaha South or Central creates the atmosphere for the event. I think the people in our area will support it and come out and watch it. It's a once in a, I mean, I don't know if it'll ever happen again, and so I think people will get out and want to watch it.
I think they will. If anybody's going to support it, this area will. And I'll tell you a little funny story about that, because I wanted you to make the point that sometimes there just aren't teams that are good enough that certain year to play a national power. And the first person that ever told me that and explained the whole thing was your mother. What a fan. I mean, hey, Bobby, you have to realize. And I thought, this is great. You know, I mean, she's, you know, and I said, oh, you got to be on the next show. So
yeah, she's also, I don't know if she told you, Bobby, an expert in rebounding.
I suppose she, I think I've heard.
When we're not rebounding, she lets me know about it. So.
Maybe she did a little bit of that up at Anselmo Myrna, who knows. There's been a lot of great, yeah. Well, it's time to go over the matchups, right, Tino? I think, you know, and Coach Gavers, jump in anytime you want to. There's 8 games on tap, and in the 11th annual Heartland Hoops Classic, and it begins at 9 a.m. in the morning with a couple of Class C2 teams that have 2 losses between them, UTAN and South Loop. Both played in the state football final. South Loop played in the 8-man, I believe it was D1. And UTAN, your C2 champion. UTAN currently rated number 3 in C2. South Loop number 9. You both are on long winning streaks. I think UTAN lost to Elmwood Murdoch the opening night in that Lourdes tournament, and then beat Lourdes. And South Loop's only losses to Amherst, I believe, the second game. So both teams on a long winning streak. Do you know anything that sticks out about either one of those teams?
I don't know a lot. I mean, Coach Gavers, knows a few players from the South Loop roster.
Yeah, I saw UTAN play this summer, and they just play really well together. I mean, they play hard, and then you're going to have the same thing out of South Loop. When you're talking about teams that have had experienced success in football, those kids know how to compete.
Yep.
Those kids know how to work, and getting to play each other in an event like this and start off the day, it's going to be a good ball game.
And the matchup that would normally never take place, except maybe a state. And of course, one of the premier players in the game is Jack Rush, which was your mother's maiden name, I believe, and he's a heck of a ball player.
The one thing with South Loop, Bobby, is, you know, when we scheduled this, we thought it was going to be a D1 C2 matchup.
Yeah.
And I think they made the C2 classification by 1 or 2 students.
That they did, because I thought it was D1. And then Big Colton Feast, I always thought it was Feist, but it's Feast, and he's a beast. For UTAN, you're going to enjoy watching him, because that's a terrific talent. Have you seen any film on him, Coach?
I just saw this summer.
Big guy,
big,
you know.
Strong, yeah, physical guy.
And it should be interesting if he and Rush match up underneath the basket. Maybe Rush isn't underneath the basket, but anyway. So the second game is the one I'm really interested in, O'Neill and Hastings St. Cecilia, C1, C2 matchup. That takes place at 10:45. St. Cecilia has 3 losses, 14 wins. O'Neill undefeated, albeit their schedule is not as tough as St. Cecilia's by a long ways, I don't think. Nonetheless, it's a great matchup.
Well, Appleby and Framer can play.
Yep.
And so this will be interesting, because obviously St. Cecilia's plays an extremely difficult schedule. And, you know, you've got the Leach kid, the Boyd kid, and a team that really defends well. And then you got O'Neill that's obviously had a lot of success. When you haven't lost a game, you're doing a lot of things well. And then you've got a couple guys, you know, that can fill it up. So that'll be an interesting matchup.
The thing that I think this team is focused on, they didn't have a very good football year, and they lost Appleby early. And Wyatt Lever's a terrific player, going to be a walk-on at the University of Nebraska. They have, so you know, those 3 are the nucleus. And Coach Martinez, you played in St. Cecilia in the finals of the Centennial. What do you think is the strong point of that team?
Well,
to me, it's
I mean,
kind of hard to.
One is Kevin Asher. I mean,
Yeah.
he's going to have them ready to go, and he'll have a great plan. And you know they're going to guard. And
Yeah.
so I'm not sure. I mean, O'Neal's very talented.
Yeah.
But until you get on the floor and have to deal with ball pressure and denying first passes and contesting everything really in the lane, you really can't simulate that in a practice until you're faced with it. And I think it's going to be a really good game, a fun game. The Coach Asher and Greg Appleby are cousins.
Yes.
So there's some family there that I think that'll make it fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I have, and Kevin knows this. Him and I talk quite a bit. That I just have so much respect for the way he does it and the way they play that it's hard for me not to be a fan of theirs, except for a couple nights a year. So.
Yeah, and of course, Kevin Asher went to school at O'Neill St. Mary's, I
Yes.
believe, up there. So, but how valuable has Trevor Leach been to this team? He's a transfer from Sutton. I don't know the reason for the transfer, but he's there and he's good. I was under the impression the kid just could sit out there if he was unguarded and shoot, but that's certainly not the case. is
No,
it?
I mean, he can really handle the ball. He can pass it. He can score at all three levels. I mean, he can shoot the three, he can shoot the mid-range, he can take it to the rim.
Yep.
So he's helped them offensively tremendously. I think Coach Asher, would tell you that. But going back to O'Neill, last couple of years at state, I've been extremely impressed with them. I thought they've competed really well down at the state tournament. So those kids know how to win, have had success, even though football maybe didn't work out. I don't know if injuries got in the way or what happened there. But they know how to win, they know how to compete. So I'm sure both sides are going to look forward to that game.
One thing, Coach, that I think happened with O'Neill is they were so ready to hit that gym after that football season that it may have been a positive thing. So that's what I like about that team. They're not used to losing. They're right back on the winning track with 0. St. Cecilia's losses, by the way, were to Lincoln Christian, which they avenged, York, and Donovan Trumbull. That one I can't figure out, but they'll meet probably right here in sub-districts.
Yeah, they actually will.
Yep. So, game 3 is the one I'm interested in. Omaha South, 4-12. Don't let the record fool you. And 17-1 York. Omaha South is not rated. York, of course, just dethroned, depot. I don't know what. They used to be number 1, and Aurora knocked them off in the Central Finals, so they are now number 4. They're only lost to Aurora, of course. What about this matchup? We know who York, Brady Danielson, Garrett Snodgrass, Wyatt Cass, and the kid I think is an underrated player is the football quarterback, Nick Westcamp. Pretty good ball player.
I've seen York on a couple occasions. I saw him play Tino's team over in York, and boy, I thought they really got after it. I mean, I thought they guarded hard. I thought they were a very physical team, rebounded the ball well, very disciplined team. I think Coach Lamberty's done a good job with that group over in York. I also saw them at Gretna, and they held Gretna to 10 points in the first half. We had 15 to 10 and a half.
Oh, boy.
And so that was just a game with two good teams going at it. So those kids obviously know how to compete, win the state football championship. As well. And I actually saw Bruce Chubbuck Jr. last night. He came to our game in Sioux City because Kevin Harkins, Omaha South graduate, plays for us. And I talked to him about his team. He said, we can guard. He said, we just have trouble scoring the ball. And we've got a little bit of youth. But those kids know how to compete. And, of course, Bruce Chubbuck Sr. is always going to have his teams ready when they hit the floor.
And that Saunders kid, maybe, is he the leading scorer as a sophomore for Omaha South, maybe?
I
He's
believe
right
that.
up there.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
So, and York, the thing I was impressed, Garrett Snodgrass, of course, has a ride to Nebraska football, but he did a nice job against a Hyman kid from Platteview in that matchup. So another great matchup there. So I'll turn the page. Tino, is there any criteria for whether it's 7 or 8 games? I meant to ask you that. I suppose it's just the availability of really good matchups.
Right,
Is that what dictates that?
Pretty much, yeah. We've had 7 in some years, and we've had 8 in others, but it's just what we can get matched up with who and what games make sense on what number that we land on as far as 7 or 8. Both ways of doing it have worked out for us,
Yep.
but it just matters if you have 8 good games, we'll put them out there.
That sounds good. And there are 8 good games this year, especially the one coming up at 2:15. You talk about crossing classes. Class B, Gretna, 13-3, number 5 in Class B against C2's number 1 team, Ponca. whose only loss is to Winnebago, and they already have a win over Winnebago. Good grief, that is a premier matchup in my mind. What made you do this, Tino?
Well, I knew Ponca was going to be good, and you know, Jim Langen throughout last basketball season kept telling me, you know, I got to keep an eye on Ponca.
Yeah.
And so once I was able to see them in person and look at their roster, basically everybody back from a championship team. So so I knew they were going to be good, and then Brad Feakin just will play anybody. I mean,
He will.
you know, he'd have played Oak Hill if I'd asked him. So that was a fun one to put together. I think it's going to be a real fun one to watch, too.
And what about those Kingsbury boys?
Kingsbury boys are awfully good. You know, of course, the bloodlines there are pretty good.
Oh, you want to tell? I'm not sure the dad's name was.
I believe it was Cliff.
Cliff, yeah, and he
Kingsbury
played
at Iowa.
Yeah.
Obviously, very talented player, and then they end up in Ponca, Nebraska, and both those boys can flat out play. I mean, they're good ball players. So
sophomore, he was very good.
Yeah, very good. And then you know, Gretna Sullivan kid's a recruit for us. Good
Is he?
player to
Good
guard.
deal.
Yeah, and then they've got some younger kids that are awfully good, and they have a system, they have a way of doing things, and they believe in it, and they're always competitive, and they're always in games, and they've obviously won a lot of games.
And I think, to the World Herald's way of thinking, Gretna was still going to emerge as a team to beat at the end of the year, and that could very well take place.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that's going to be a very good matchup, and it's going to, you know, I really admire Coach Feakin for, you know, well, we have everything to lose and nothing to gain. He doesn't.
Well, you got two guys there. You got Coach Feakin and Coach Hurd, and they've been longtime friends. Those two guys can coach, so there's a lot of basketball dialogue going on about who we're playing and how we're going to approach it, and you got two great coaches on the bench there working together.
It just looks funny to me to see former Ralston coach Bill Hurd as an assistant.
Right.
I think that's a top assistant in the state right there. So anyway, the 4 o'clock game will be Tino's GICC team going against Winnebago, and of course Winnebago's another team that'll play anybody. They already have played, I believe, Gretna, and their losses are to Ponca, Gretna, and then Bancroft, Rosalie, Lions, Decatur. BRLD, otherwise known, and I don't need to mention your losses, Tino. They're all, and one of them has been avenged to Lincoln Lutheran. But boy, this is another good matchup. Have you been waiting to do this by any chance, to play Bago at the Hoops Classic?
Well,
since they started emerging as a power.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at it a couple times. You know, they've had the Winget kid.
Right. Yep.
The last few years, we played them a few years ago in the state semifinals. So yeah, it's always been a matchup that's been intriguing, I think, to both Winnebago and us. But to be, you know, up front, I guess I wasn't in a hurry to go play David Winget Jr. again.
No.
But no, it's going to be fun. You know, they're really good in a different way. You know, Devon LaPointe is a really good point guard. He plays at a pace that not very many high school players do. So they're really good. They just do it a little differently than they did when they had Winget.
Tell us about their post player, Lance Denny. That's a kid that has really added something a little bit different to that. You know, he's 6'6", and to me, when it started, he didn't fit the mold, but he seems to fit the mold now. Yeah,
well, I think, again, Devon LaPointe has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
He's able to adapt. But the kid can, he is a post player. He can step out a little bit, and he's real agile for a guy his length, and so he's going to probably create, not just for us, he's created problems for people on their schedule. So.
And he had 26 points the other night, just coming off a big game there. So, you know, and I don't know if they're. Ponca seems to have their number, and I don't know what Ponca plays that bothers them. Maybe it's your defense.
Well,
that would be nice.
Coach Gavers can tell you. I mean, if you've seen the shoulders on those Kingsbury boys, and they got a couple other players that also play on Ponca's roster. That their wingspans are big. They're strong.
Dalton Tremaine is one that comes to my mind. I mean, friends with his dad on Facebook, and he was a terrific athlete. But those three were key in football, they're key in basketball. They find ways to win in the weirdest ways. So anyway, that should be a great matchup. Tino's hasn't prepared at all for that one, I don't suppose. Omaha Scott will headline the game at 4:45 against Aurora. This looks like a state championship matchup to me. Good grief. Scott 15-3. Losses to Omaha Central, Bennington, and Ron Colley, who has a terrific team, Coach Gavers. Man.
Yeah, they do.
And Aurora's only loss is to Gretna, and they've lost to York, but they obviously just avenged that loss. So anything about that matchup either one of you guys want to talk about? Because to me, that could be a Class B state championship if things fall right. And as Coach Gavers and I talked before, you know, they have to be on opposite ends of the bracket before that happens. And also, we better mention Class B and what they're doing this year different in sub-districts than they did a year ago. I think it's the same setup as volleyball, if I'm not mistaken. So, Coach Gavers, you have any?
Yeah, I think the Shineman kid's finally getting healthy, I think. You know, he broke his, thumb?
And shot her up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he's everybody knew he was going to grow and grow and grow. I played with his dad at Hastings College.
Oh, you did?
Scotty Shineman, who was one of the toughest, mentally and physically toughest guys that you're ever going to play with. And Baylor, obviously, is extremely skilled, really understands the game. He's a great passer, has great vision, has great feel for the game. And obviously, Penner, you know, signed with UNK, awfully talented young man there as well. So Aurora's, I think, playing well at the right time. They're getting it together going into championship month, February and into March. Scott is, you know, Jurgs does a great job with Scott. Coach Jurgs at Scott. So those guys obviously play a great schedule as well. So they're battle tested. You know, those two teams competing at this event, that is a great matchup.
I don't think Scott is that old of a team. They've got a couple of sophomores that are good. This Gudrun kid hit a buzzer beater the other night. There's three sophomores here or two that are good, the Murfield kid and Gordon kid. And then, of course, how many guys for Aurora, and they want to play up-tempo, how many guys on that team could hurt you? Mike Hersberg's boy could hurt you. And he could get you from outside. And then there's one that I didn't even put in bold print, that Morrell kid. He could just sit over there in the corner. Oh, let's not guard him. Bang, in goes the tray. And Barkacher's a good player. Good grief.
Well, what those guys are going to do, so they can shoot the ball, is they're going to stretch the floor for guys like Shireman and Penner. And so you got to kind of pick your poison on how you're going to guard that, and that's always a difficult thing to do.
Does Scott like to run?
Scott plays, they'll play up tempo. They like to press full court. They do it 2 or 3 different styles of pressing. They're deep, and like you said, I think they're still fairly young. We played them a year ago, and I know a couple freshman kids really hurt us, and they had a couple sophomores that hurt us, and I think they only had maybe 1 or 2 seniors that contributed a year ago. So
Christian Baker was one.
Yeah, I think they'll be not only this year. I think they'll be right there in the thick of it on a yearly basis. So should be an entertaining game, really.
It should be from a coach's standpoint. I don't know if you could get a much better matchup other than the premier game here. And the big game of the night, Oak Hill Academy and Sunrise Christian Academy from, it's Wichita, but I don't know what the exact name of the town is. It doesn't matter. But am I wrong? Is Oak Hill number 2 in the South section of USA Today's Ken Pomeroy ratings? Is that correct? Or number 1?
I'm not sure. I don't know what ratings are what. In some polls they're 1, in some polls they're 2. Good. I know, like in the Max Preps, Excellent 25, they're 2. Sunrise is anywhere between 16 and 18. And I don't know what either team has this week to see what they come out with next week with that.
But wasn't Luke Barnwell up here for your clinic?
Luke Barnwell came and spoke at our coaches clinic here in September.
Yeah, I was mesmerized the entire time. Wow. And I don't know much about the premier players on either one of these teams, so you guys are going to have to carry me on this. I'd like to know how many Division I players each team has. Can you right off the bat? I've got the rosters here if you want to look at them, but they don't mean a lot. I'm not up on it.
Well, I always tell Coach Kester and Coach Cord, who worked for Tino, getting the teams to the locker rooms, if you could sign the 12th man on Oak Hill's team, Hastings College would much appreciate that.
I think I've heard that.
Sunrise Christian, so they've yet to come through, so that put a little heat on those guys.
Jiminy Christmas, yeah.
I'm not sure what I know the Keontae Johnson from Oak Hill. I see he's putting up big numbers. I think they have a guy that's committed to Kentucky or Duke.
Oh, gee.
And then the 7-foot sophomore from Sunrise, I know that Infali Dante.
Yeah.
Played last year.
Yeah,
didn't he, Tino?
yeah, he's probably getting some good national exposure. But Coach Isley and I were watching the Nebraska-Penn State game here a while back, and Oak Hill's 6th or 7th man that year, the last time they came to Grand Island, is Penn State's best player. So
Didn't even start.
Didn't start,
Gee,
and so that tells you the calibers. It's not uncommon for them to have 10 guys have a Division I scholarship. So I'm sure they're littered in and out of that roster.
You look at Sunrise too, international flavor. Venezuela, Belgium, Canada, Bahamas, Mali, France. So they've got an international flavor to their roster, which I think is a unique deal for kids coming to Grand Island, Nebraska that are from out of the country.
And I'm going to have to caution people to get on Max Preps, because I know somebody that did it, and they looked at Sunrise Christian's varsity team and said, well, they're just common. Well, that's not who's coming. It's the elite team. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure that either Oak Hill or Sunrise Christian Academy is eligible for their state championships. Is that?
No, neither of
the elite team.
The Sunrise Elite and Oak Hill Academy, the gold team that comes out, neither one of them play in their state associations.
Yeah, that would be a little unfair.
Yeah.
Oak Hill, all the way down. So
they have to qualify for Dick's National Tournament.
They have to qualify and be invited to Dick's Nationals. Last year, Sunrise, if they were able to win 1 or 2 more games, probably made that Final 8. I know that was a big goal for Coach Barnwell this year, was to try to get into that Dick's Nationals, and Oak Hill probably hasn't had a year where they have not been invited. So I think they put themselves in the thick of that already.
And these two teams, I don't believe, have met I don't know if they've ever met, have they?
No, they went to the same event this year, but they were in opposite sides of they were in different pools. The pools didn't cross bracket, so they were actually at a couple of events together, but didn't play in the same pool. So
first time right here at the Heartland Event Center. And then the nightcap is no slouch either. Platteview 16-2, number 3 in Class B versus unrated Crete 13-6. Crete has some nice wins though, and of course the Platteview, Coach Gabers lost a very key player at the beginning of the year, didn't they?
Yeah, Rashawn Hobalt got hurt for him, I think, tore his ACL, I believe. Coach Brodsky's a good friend of mine, an alum of Hastings College, and that was a big blow to them because that was their, third leading scorer, really athletic guy on the defensive end. But I think they've adjusted nicely to playing without him, which again is a difficult thing, but they seem to have it together. And you need a few games when you lose a guy like that to get your rhythm, your chemistry, all that stuff down.
Did you see them play York by chance? Because it looked like to me that he might have been the key to the All-Stater Nate Thayer getting more points, but he wasn't there, and Thayer didn't score many that night.
Yeah, I did not actually get to see that particular ball game, but Coach Brodsky said that York had some guys that really shot the ball well from the perimeter. Of course, York's awfully good, so just a matchup of 2 good teams. Class B is really, really deep.
Yes.
I mean, and you've got some premier teams coming to town here that would certainly be worth watching.
So the Hyman kid, I don't know where he's going to college, but
he's going to Nebraska.
Yeah, he's one of the premier players in the state, 6'10", very skilled, and give a shout out to the Kingston boys from Platteview because they've really come through in the absence of whoever you said.
Right.
And then Crete, of course, Carter Kent, the point guard, has started for 4 years, and he has great bloodlines. Jonah Wayan, Clay, it looks like you were, but it's hair, fine player, and then Ethan Mock, the big guy underneath. At 6'5", will have to deal with Grady Hyman. So that wraps up the program, which every year I have to say this, and I firmly believe it gets better and better, Tino. I mean, every year seems to, as a whole, become greater and greater. And I know there's luck, but it has to be a credit to you. And I'm sure my daughter has a lot to do with it. No, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Well, Erin does do a lot of the heavy lifting on the deal. She creates the program. She makes sure that all those people you said that are there on that day are there working. And I probably have the easy part as far as trying to figure out what games to put on there, but
It's always good, I can tell you that. You won't be there, will you, Coach?
I'll be in Sioux Center, Iowa, but
right.
I'll be following scores and all that. We'll have some eyes representing the Broncos somewhere in the stands that'll let us know.
This is off the cuff. I'm going to give you some kudos. What is Hastings College doing terrific this year?
Thanks.
What happened? What changed? Did it change during the season, or did you know this was coming?
Well, we've played pretty well for the most part. We got thumped last night in Sioux City, but that was recent. But we've beaten 3 national teams: Briarcliff, Northwestern, DAC West. Just a credit to our guys. Good group of guys that play well together, play hard. And we picked up a kid out of California from Los Angeles that was at Saddleback Community College. Marty Levinson was out there.
Oh, yeah.
And his name's Kevin Miller, and he's really helped us on both ends of the floor. He's a great defender and just a dynamic athlete that's helped our team quite a bit. And then our 7 seniors have really created a culture of work and togetherness and chemistry and those types of things.
Can you name some of the Nebraska kids that people that know that have contributed to this
Yeah,
team?
Tyler Hedlund's a great story for us, kid from Boone Central that worked his way up through our JV program, stayed with it, shooting 60% from the field, 50% from the arc, just really efficient, hard-nosed, tough kid. Jake Hansen, kid out of Omaha Gross, having a good year for us. Connor Musel, who's injured right now. We've played without him the last 2 games. Kid out of Lincoln.
I didn't know that.
Kid out of Lincoln North Star. Alex Fay from Ord. Wes Spalding from Fremont. Kevin Harkins, a 6'8" kid from Omaha South. That's a pre-med kid. Bart Hiscox, a kid from Bennington, a sophomore. Zach Kitten, from Hastings St. Cecilia. Eli Hunter from Grand Island Central Catholic. So we've got a bunch of Nebraska kids that are just good, hard-working kids.
And home games coming up. If somebody wants to go over and check out the
Saturday, we'll get a chance to avenge our loss last night against Morningside. So at 4 p.m.
Oh, get over there. Is there a ladies' game before that?
You betcha, 2 o'clock.
And they're doing very well. So get over there Saturday. I think I'm going to have to be over there and watch that one. Yeah, turn around quick to get Morningside. Huh?
Absolutely.
Cool.
A little mini NBA series this week. So
That's right.
We got a little work to do after last night, but we'll get there for Saturday.
If anybody can do it, you can. So, Tino, once again, the ticket prices, are there any courtside seats still available?
Yeah, there's probably about 20 or 25 still left available.
Well, what a seat, man.
Yeah, if you're a fan that's gonna be there for several games, that's a good way to take in the Classic. But those are $75 a seat. Adult tickets are 16, students are 10.
And that's all day, so you can't find a better bargain than that. Heartland Hoops Classic coming up at the Heartland Events Center, February 10th. It's a week from this Saturday at Fonner Park. Get there early. There's always great seats, and some of the people that come every year sit in the same seats. So this is going to be a great event for Tino Martinez and Coach Bill Gavers from Hastings College. Guys, thank you for being on, and I want you to get out and support this event because it's the best bargain for basketball in the state on any given day. So for theindependent.com, Zach Mayhew behind the camera, producer, engineer, and so much more. This is Bobby Mills for theindependent.com saying see you at the Heartland Hoops Classic.